and welcome to Sarah's Stampin' Retreat. Today I'll be creating 5 cards using these butterflies and flowers layering decorative masks. And so we'll have a little play and look at some of the different things that you can do with them. So you can see that the masks layer up to create pictures. So this one can layer on top of this one can layer on top of that one, and it adds detail to it. Then you've got some pattern masks as well. So you've got the 3 pattern masks and 3 layering masks. So I'm quite excited to have a go with these. So let's see what we can create. So for my first card, I just want to make a simple 1 layer card. So I've got a white thick A6 card blank. So I always use the thick basic white cardstock for my card blanks because it just gives a nicer quality of card. And that's 8 1/4 inches by 5 7/8 inches scored and folded in half. And then I'm going to pop this on here, and I'm going to use some masking sheet. So this is like old masking sheet, which is like a low tack adhesive sheet. You could use post-it notes or anything with a low tack adhesive that's just going to cover off those bits, because otherwise you're going to get ink in all these places. Obviously you don't want that. So I'm just covering off all these sides so I don't get ink where I don't want it. And it also has the added benefit that it keeps the stencil in place as well. So I'm going to come in first on this detail floral with my blending brush and my Flirty Flamingo ink. So I'm going to go on here with a circular motion like this, and I'm going to use the same circular motion to pop my ink into my stencil like this. So now that I've done that, I'm going to take these bits off, and I'm going to move the stencil and I'm going to reuse these pieces. So I'm going to line up this stencil, and you can line it up using the white spaces that are left from the last one. So you can see all these white bits in between. You want to make sure all of those are covered as much as possible, because that gives a nice clean look at the end. So I'm just trying to line this up. So I think that's looking pretty good now. So let's just stick these over the top again. Then I'm going to take my Calypso Coral. Don't have to worry too much about my brush because it's a darker shade of the Flirty Flamingo colour, so it's very similar. It won't ruin my ink pad at all. And then I'm going to go back over this with the Calypso Coral. So I'm just cleaning this brush off on the back of this piece of paper. So I'm just getting all of the orange off. So it still look dirty on here, but when you have a look now, it's not really given any orange off when I use it. So very faint amount, but nothing that I'm worried about. So then I can use it again for the green. So I'm going to line up these leaves on here. You can see they just fit nicely around the floral image, and then I'm going to take that down. And then I also want to cover over these 2 flowers in the centre. So I've just cut another piece of masking sheet just to go over there. And then I'm good to go with my purposes. So again, nice circular motions. And then I'm going to go circular motions again onto the mask. So we've got those nice leaves around. And I'm also going to add the leaves from the other end as well. Then I'm going to use Old Olive just to go through these areas. So then we've got this really gorgeous layered image. So all I need to do is add my sentiment. So today I'm going to be using sentiments from this Celebrating You stamp set, which you'll probably have seen me used quite a lot before if you follow my channel. I think I'm going to make this one into a Mother's Day card because it's Mother's Day in the UK at the end of March. So I'm going to use this Happy Mother's Day sentiment. So I'm just going to test stamp this over here. So you can see that it's not actually very vibrant. I think I need to re-ink my stamp pad. So I'm just going to do that on here so you can see. So I like to go this way, all the way over. And then I like to go this way, down. And I'll go one more time each way. You don't want to over ink it, but you want it to be nice and juicy. Normally I'd leave that for a little bit just to kind of soak up before I stamped with it, but let's see how we go. Yeah, you can see that's looking a bit better already. So let's pop this down here. So that's our cute one layer card finished. So for this next card, I've got a piece of basic white cardstock. I'm going to use this butterfly stencil. I'm going to cut this one out, so I'm not actually worried if it goes over into the other bit. So I'm not worried too much about masking it fully. I'm going to use my Daffodil Delight ink, and I'm just going to just do a nice little blend over here with the Daffodil Delight. And then there are lots of things that you could do here. You could put these flowers over the top of this mask and go through them so you get a nice floral design over the top. You could do the same with one of the background masks, so if you inked through that, then you would get a nice floral butterfly. I'm going to use this one that's intended for the layering. So I'm just going to layer that on top of here. You can see that with this stencil, these bits aren't held down very well. So if you use a blending brush, they're likely to go like this and you're not going to get a very crisp image. So I'm going to use a sponge dauber instead, because then I can go up and down on it and it's more likely to give a nice crisp image. So I'm going to use Bumblebee over the top, so I'm going tone on tone. So I'm just dabbing it in my Bumblebee ink, and then I'm just dabbing that over the top of here. And we've got this nice tone on tone butterfly. I think what I'm going to do is just go in with my black Stampin' White marker and just go over the antennae in the body. So then I'm just going to chop this out. So then for the card, I've got a 5-inch square card blank made of the thick basic white cardstock. So that's 10 inches by 5 inches scored and folded in half. Then I've got a 4 3/4 inch piece of Bumblebee cardstock. Then I've got a piece of basic white cardstock that is 3.5 inches square, and a piece of basic black that's just 1/8 of an inch bigger. So I'm going to use the Happy Birthday sentiment from the Celebrating You stamp set and my black memento ink. I'm just going to stamp that Happy Birthday sentiment just in the top right corner. Then I'm just going to layer all these pieces up. Then I'm just going to pop some dimensionals on the back of here. And then I'm going to pop some glue behind the butterfly's body. I've just bent up the wings a little bit, and then I'm just going to pop that on the front. And how cute is that there? So for this next card, I'm going to create a bit of an ombre blended background. So I've got fresh freesia here, and I'm just going to work some of that into the top of my card. And I'm going over, slowly building up the colour. So I'm happy with that level of colour now. So I'm then going to go in with my rich raspberry, and I'm going to work that from the bottom up. And you can see I've lost most of the colour off of there now. So I'm going to pop that back into the fresh freesia and just do a little bit more at the top, just to get that into a nice blend. So I'm happy with that level of colour now. So I'm going to take this mask with all the flowers all over it, and I'm going to pop that on there, just hold it in place with a bit of the masking sheet. I don't want to get the masking sheet actually on the card at all. I don't want it to block anything. And then I'm just going to grab a tiny bit of water. And I'm also going to grab an old cloth. So I'm going to put my sponge dauber into there, squeeze out a bit of the water, pop it on there so I don't have too much water on, because I don't want to soak my paper. And then I'm just going to dab this all over the stencil. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but in person you can actually see the colour lifting a bit. So I'm just going to get a little bit more water, dab it out on there again. And again, you don't want to absolutely soak the paper. Let's have a look how that looks then. You can see that we've got this really gorgeous distressed looking background. And you can see here where I was putting it on for longer and I was dabbing it down, we've taken off a lot more of the colour, and then I started getting a bit quicker over here, and you've got like a bit more of a precise pattern. But I quite like the way that it's quite distressed looking. But if you wanted a more precise pattern, you want less water, you want to dab it over really quickly. So I'm going to pop that there to dry a second, and while that's drying then I'm going to just work on my main focal point. So I'm going to use this flower again. So let's put some masking sheet across here where the other flowers are. I'm going to pop a bit here just to hold it in place. So then for this one, I'm going to use the sponge dauber because I want a bit more of an accurate application. It's never going to look completely accurate because the lines are too fine between the flowers, but we can get something that looks a little bit more accurate by applying the sponge dauber rather than with the brush. So you can see this colour is kind of bleeding onto the big flowers. That's okay. And I'm going to go in with my Daffodil Delight and do the other flowers. And I think this is kind of a bit of an abstract card. Like you've got quite an abstract background, the colours are blending in the flowers. But sometimes I like a bit of a messier look. Okay. So let's lift that up. And look, we've got a really nice little flower there. So then let's come in with this one that layers on top. So I'm going to go back over. I'm going to use the bumblebee first on the yellow bits. I think I've actually made a bit of a mistake on here in that I haven't cleaned my stencil since when I used it for the first card, so it's actually got some pinkiness on it. So you'll see a little bit of pinky going into that yellow, but actually it kind of works with my overall card colours anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. And then I'm going to come in with a rich raspberry, and I'm just going to go over these little bits here. Let's see what we've got. I think that actually blends together really nicely. So let's add some leaves around the outside. And because the masks are see-through, it is actually quite easy to line them all up. And then maybe I'll go for a little bit of garden green on this one for the leaves. I'm not going to do both sets of leaves on this one, just the one set. So I'm going to use the Happy Birthday sentiment again. I think this time I'll stamp it in a rich raspberry ink. I'm just going to do that on a scrap of basic white cardstock. You can see I've just clipped a bit of the edge of the stamp there, so I'm just going to do that once more. So then I'm just going to use some of my foam pads for the back of here. And I'm going to pop that on there. So I want one foam pad on this side because that's going to lay on top of this. That's already got one underneath it. And then two pads on this side to make it level with the other side. So that's our third card finished. Then I'm going to use this stencil for this next background. Let's just attach that with some of this paper. And I'm going to use my Flirty Flamingo. So I'm going to start at the top with my Flirty Flamingo, and I'm just going to brush it with my blending brush through the stencil. I think I'm just going to use the one colour for this background. I forgot to say on this last card, by the way, this shape is die cut from the It's So Sweetly dies. So then I'm going to use my Daffodil Delight ink just to pop on some colour onto a butterfly. So I'm just using a scrap piece of basic white cardstock. And I think this time I'm going to try topping it with the Calypso Coral. So let's get some Calypso Coral on my sponge dauber. We'll just dab that through. The colours on this card remind me a bit of like a sunrise or a sunset or something. And just as I did with the other butterfly I made, I'm just going to define the body of the butterfly. You'll see I'm not actually being very careful with the outline of the body because I'm going to colour it in. I just want to use it as a bit of a guide really. So I'm just kind of using the pen end just to draw the outline, I'm using the brush end to fill it in. But again, because I'm going to cut around it, you notice I wasn't very careful with the antennae. So let's go cut that out. So I'm going to heat emboss this Just For You stamp onto some black cardstock. I'm going to do that with white embossing powder. So this is actually an old thing of white embossing powder that I have from a kit, because my main one is in my class bag. I don't dare take it out because otherwise I forget it, but it's exactly the same as the normal white embossing powder that you buy in the pack. It's just a different bottle, that's all. So I'm going to heat that with my heat tool. So I'm just going to bend the wings of the butterfly up a little bit, pop a little bit of glue just behind its body, and put that on there like that. And then I'm just going to glue this on. I'm just going to take one of these adhesive backed hexagons and pop it there. And I'm going to use another couple. There. So that's that card finished. Then for my final card, I'm going to create a bit of a kind of border look with the florals. So let's just cover these up. You see I'm using the same bits of masking sheet for each project. So I'm going to use the pinks again. So I'm going to use the Flirty Flamingo first. And I'm going to put this down here. Again up there. So let's then go in on top of that with this one. And then we're going with the Calypso Coral. And let's pop this over here. And that added colour of the second level really lifts the whole image. So for the leaves, I'm going to go back in with some old olive, and I'm going to use my sponge dauber because I don't want to go over the leaves like this one that are covering another flower. So I won't be doing that one, for example. It's just easier to pick those out with the sponge dauber. Now I'm going to take some Mossy Meadow cardstock. Now I'm going to make this into another Mother's Day card. So I'm going to heat emboss in white on this piece of Mossy Meadow cardstock. So let's just heat that with my heat tool. So I'm going to put that sentiment up on some dimensionals. Now I'm going to add a little bit of sparkle with some of these elegant faceted gems. So that's that final card completed. So I'm going to pop that over there and bring in the rest. So there are all of our cards for today. I'd love it if you let me know in the comments which one's your favourite. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, I'd appreciate you clicking like below, and you can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new YouTube video available. All of the products that we've used for today's cards are listed in the description below, and there's also a host code there. So if you pop the host code into your basket before you check out, then I'll send you a free gift after the end of the month. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.